Good day, everyone, and welcome to today's CIA Learning System program. Increase your chances of passing the CIA exam. This is a CIA exam prep webinar. I'm Marie Lilly with the IIA, and I'll be your host for today. We're happy to have you with us. If at any time you have some technical issues, just shoot us a question, and we'll be able to work with you behind the scenes. Today, we are going to be talking about helping you to understand the CIA program, eligibility requirements, determine how much time you'll need to prep for the exam, prepare to pass using the CIA learning system, and to utilize simple study and testing tips to increase your chances of success. With us today, we have Jonathan Jones. He's the Senior Manager, the IIA Global Certification Administration. We have Vicki McIntyre. She's the President of First Plus Resolutions. And we also have Kelly Quinn. She's the Vice President, IIA Strategic Partnership with the CIA Learning System. So at this point, I am going to turn the program over to Jonathan. Jonathan, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, morning, evening, depending on where you are. I'm really happy to get a chance to speak with you all. I love to be able to talk with some of our members and prospective certified individuals about the CIA. So welcome. So as previously discussed, these are the things that we will be going over. But again, I'm a senior manager with certification, so I'm really going to focus on the admission into the program, what to expect, just a real general outline before we get into more detail of the exam preparation. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was just the scope of what it means when you're joining the CIA. Maybe some of you are being asked to join by your employer. Maybe you're in school. Maybe you've never heard of the IA before this. Whatever the case is, hopefully you'll understand by the end of this that this is a large network of professionals. There's over 165,000 certified individuals, and if you look at the map, it is spread out throughout different continents around the globe. So that means no matter where your career takes you, internal audit, external audit, maybe you will work for one of the big four, who knows. It's comforting to know that you have that flexibility and that there are so many other individuals you can connect with and you can utilize during your audit journey. So here are some basic stats that we were able to gather during our last analysis. And we do this every few years just to get a good handle of where the market is, what our members want, what our customers want, what the industry dictates. So if you look at some of these numbers, 84% of the people polled believe that the CIA added value. When you look at the middle column, CAEs, who are normally the decision makers, probably the heads of the internal audit in their respective organizations, more than 70% of those believed that this did add value. And just as a reminder, not necessarily all of the individuals polled held a CIA. So even for individuals who did not hold a CIA, they were still aware of it, and it was still something that they preferred to have with the individual that they were hiring. So I think that's a very interesting statistic, and again, just ties into the global awareness of the IIA and specifically the CIA. And of course, the final column, that's a great number to see, an additional 38,000 that you have the potential to make as opposed to someone who is not certified. Again, with such a large global network, all of those connections, throughout the world, that does add up to more income potentially and more explosive growth throughout the course of your career. In this slide, you'll see a visualization of the certification process. Some of you may be in the first step, second, third, or maybe you even completed either way, we try to make it as easy as possible to obtain the certification as well as maintain. The first part is just to apply, right? So you submit the application, and then, maybe you're like, well, now what do I do? So before you get to the exam, even really the preparation, you want to make sure that your application is submitted. There's so many times that I see, individuals, maybe they're not sure where to start. Once you submit the application, you have up to 90 days to submit your supporting documentation. If you follow our candidate handbook, or if you go to our website and follow the certification process, you'll be able to see step-by-step, very similar to this demonstration that's on your screen now. Once you apply into the program, then it's a matter of testing, which is part of the reason why you guys are here today. You have parts 1, parts 2, and parts 3, and you have a total of 3 years to complete those exams in their entirety. In the event that you fail, that's fine. You can take the exam as many times as you need to within your 3-year window. The third step is to verify your experience. Depending on your education level, which is one of the 3 application requirements, you do have different levels of experience that you will be needed to evidence in order to obtain the CIA. So once you've done everything and you've passed the exams, you'll just need to upload evidence of experience. Just as an example, for instance, if you hold a master's degree, you are only required to evidence 1 year of audit-related experience. If you, let's say, had never attended any type of formal secondary education at all, then you would be required to evidence at least 5 years of internal audit experience. Again, more information can be found on the website, but once you become certified, congratulations. You are able to continue your certification journey by just reporting CPE each year. So a lot of you guys are going to be doing the work anyway, and a lot of you are going to have company-required trainings. Maybe some of you are involved with our chapters, your local IIA. So I don't think earning the CPE is going to be much of a problem for many of you, and you just need to submit the attestation form unless you are selected for an audit. You do that every year by December 31st of each year, and that's how you maintain your CIA. So it really is kind of a straightforward process. You apply, you test, earn the certification, and then you simply maintain it. On this next slide, we give a slight breakdown of the syllabi. Again, all the information is available on the website. One cool thing that is on the website as well is a breakdown of the resources used. So if you are just starting out, unfamiliar with maybe some of the topics that are covered in the syllabus, you're able to see the resources or the materials that were used in order to generate the questions. Part 1 is basically the fundamentals of just the very basics of auditing, and you'll see that reflected in the percentage breakdown with a huge amount going to the, well, what's referred to as the Red Book or the IPPF, which are just the standards of how you think about things. It's, the basics of what you should look for, whether or not you are a student, an apprentice. I know around the world there are different apprenticeship programs that are related to internal audit. So these are probably a lot of the day-to-day functions that you would see that are covered in Part 1. So very important for the fundamentals of not only passing the exam, but establishing your career as a certified internal auditor. Part 2, you'll see that there's slightly less topics, and that, of course, affects the weighted percentage. So the amount of topics in Part 2 that are related to performing the engagement is substantially higher, and that's because this is about actually, doing the exam, or excuse me, not the exam, but doing the job, the functions. So now you know in theory what to do based on Part 1, but now it's about action. Again, a lot of you may already be doing this, and maybe something that you have experience with, or maybe something that's brand new to you, but you'll see that the flow of the exam series is to kind of train you to understand it mentally first, then you understand the application, and then finally there's part 3, which is like an advanced level of understanding the business, right? And I think this is part of the reason why the CIA is so valuable, because as an employer, I know that not only do you have the fundamentals of internal auditing, but there's a lot of business that is involved in the exam series. So things that maybe you learned in grad school, or maybe things that you've never covered, will be introduced to you in part 3. For some of you, it may be familiar. For others, maybe it will not be. But either way, it's definitely great information, and it's kind of putting the ceiling, as I like to say, on that foundation that you built through parts 1 and 2. So again, the syllabus breakdown is available on the website. I mean, you guys are able to follow that. But of course, it's not going to be complete unless you have, the CIA learning system to kind of balance it off and to let you know where to go. And for more information about that, I'm very excited on our presenters today. I know that Vicki will be able to shed some good light on the exam and really what you need to do to study. So with that being said, I will turn the presentation over now, and thank you all for your time.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you so much, Jonathan. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today and talk with you about preparing for your CIA exams. You need to know that it does require preparation. It requires a very dedicated effort. This is an exam that you cannot cram for. You definitely need to study. So let's get to it. How do we prepare? The CIA learning system was developed by the Institute of Internal Auditors, and it aligns the professional knowledge that you have attained through your work experience. Even if you don't have work experience in the profession, that's okay. It's going to align your training and your expertise in studying if you're newly right out of school. The system will give you a personalized study path so that you can do a little assessment and determine where your strengths and your opportunities are and develop a study path for your own success. The system is built into small micro-learning segments so that you can capitalize on 5 or 10 minutes of available time to study, to prepare for the exam. So little tiny snippets of information, and it's very easy to navigate the system. Also embedded within the content are links that take you directly to the IIA website where you can get additional information to support what you're learning. The system is designed for mobile devices so that you can download it to your e-reader or whatever tools you're learning, whatever tools you're using. And in terms of how you're going to prepare, a lot of people enjoy studying on their own. So self-study is certainly an option. But some people don't do well with that. Some people like the accountability of having others, by their side, studying along with them. So another option is to take an instructor-led class, and the IIA has these in the virtual space on a very regular basis. If you go out to the IIA.org and look at the learning area, you can find courses that are offered just about every month. So know that that's available as well. The IIA also offers group training sessions where you can bring a qualified, highly experienced instructor into your own audit activity and, have customized training just for your team. That helps the instructor to kind of level set the classroom and understand everybody's background, work experience or not. And, the instructor is better able to customize the course of study for the team. So here we have our self-study, instructor-led, or corporate. One of the advantages of the corporate environment is that there are volume discounts when there are 5 or more CIA systems involved in the study session. I mentioned the online courses under the instructor-led group. We also are starting to move back into the live classroom. So know that that is available if you're interested in that as well. So, obviously before COVID, we had these courses going on all over the world in a live classroom setting, and we are starting to move back to that delivery channel. So know that in the future, fingers crossed, we'll be able to meet face-to-face in a live classroom again. So what are your steps to success? You really must use a very systematic, disciplined approach to how you're studying. I've taught this course to thousands of students all over the world in various modes. We've taught pieces, for example, a Part 1 course over a very high-level review for just 4 or 5 hours. We've taught the Part 1 course over 16 or 20 hours. We've taught the class at international conferences, seminars, so classes hosted by IIA chapters all over the U.S. and Canada and the Caribbean. The point is, no matter who you are or what your study approach is, no matter your experience, you need to be very disciplined about it. I've always recommended that you treat this like a self-study university course where you have a curriculum, you have your textbooks, you know that at the end of the class, you're going to have a final exam, and that'll be your CIA exam part that you're testing for. So just know that it requires an assessment, understand where you're starting from, dedicate yourself to your studying, and then make sure that you do your practice. Make sure that you kind of put yourself in exam mode and do the final exam using the online tools and resources to make sure that you are, in fact, ready to take your actual CIA exam. So this is going to require your dedication. It's going to require effort. So let's go through the process in a little more detail. Number 1, assess where you are today. You need to get this baseline understanding of where you are today with understanding the various topics in each exam syllabus. So the learning system has a module for you where you can complete an online pretest that's going to give you this diagnostic on your strengths and your weaknesses, and it's going to give you the information that you need in order to create your study strategy and your personalized study plan. So this is a very, really cool feature of the learning system because none of us want to waste time studying things that we already are familiar with, that we already know very well. So after you have established your baseline of understanding of the syllabus topics, then you're going to choose your study path. So based on your output from your assessment, your pre-test results are going to determine how you're going to study and allow you to prioritize those topics where you need the most work. You can skip from topic to topic. You can override topics that you don't need to study. You can do your exam parts in any order so that you can go, if you're recently out of university, out of business school, you can go straight to Part 3 if you think that, you have the business content fresh in your mind. You might want to go straight to Part 3. If you've worked for an audit activity that closely follows the IIA standards, you might want to tackle Parts 1 and 2 first. So you can take them in any order. The point is that you can skip around the content within the parts. so that you're not spending time on those areas that you already have demonstrated your understanding through your pretest, and you can really focus on those areas where you're struggling. Reading materials. So we said earlier that you can download the curriculum to your e-reader. You can also get the printed books if you prefer to, actually use a highlighter and use taking notes in the margins of your textbook and so forth. A lot of people prefer the printed materials. Others don't need them at all. They just use the online tools and resources, and they download the textbooks to their iPad or whatever. So the system does provide you with time estimates for each of the topics that you will be tested on, so that may be helpful to you as well in terms of planning your study time. Again, the topics are presented in small segments so that you can study very efficiently. And if you want more detail, if you're struggling with a topic, then you can just click on the link that's embedded in the curriculum, and it'll take you right to the IIA resource pages where you have the actual standards, you have the actual interpretations to the standards and the implementation guidance, so that you can take a deeper dive to really get a better understanding of exactly what the topic is, what you'll be tested on for each topic. Quizzes. This is one of the great things about the IIA's CIA learning system. The quiz questions allow you to apply what you've learned and get an understanding of where you are in terms of your road to success on your CIA exams. So you'll see that the CIA exam is comprised of 125 multiple choice questions for part 1, and you have 2.5 hours to complete those 125 questions. Part 2 and Part 3 are just 100 multiple choice questions, and you have 2 hours to complete each of those exams. Often, you will see two answer choices that are distractors or really don't make any sense, or you know that the answer choice is not relevant to the question. Oftentimes, you will be left with 2 answer choices, and you're struggling between one or the other. Your job is to choose the best answer, considering what you know, what you've learned through your study of the standards and guidance, and through your good judgment. As an auditor, we have to exercise judgment. And so 2 answers might appear to both be correct. Your job is to choose the best answer. So the quizzes allow you to test your understanding. The quiz questions allow you to get familiar with the language and the semantics and the terminology that is used in the professional practices framework and in your practice as an internal auditor. Each quiz question will give you immediate feedback. So you'll get the little green indicator there if you've answered the question correctly, and you'll get a red indicator if you have not been successful in answering that question. So you will be provided with the rationale for why the correct answer is the correct answer, and you will also be provided with a reference, the chapter and verse, to the actual place in the curriculum where you can go back and study. So this is a very, efficient feature of the learning system to help you move along in your study, drill down a little more deeply and make sure that you're getting the content before you move on. The flashcards and the glossary are another great tool in the CIA learning system. The flashcards, a best practice that I've had, from my many students is that they actually print them. They print them on a hard copy with the terminology on the front and maybe the definition on the back. They augment the topic with what they have learned through their reading and their study of the curriculum. They will also take kind of a deeper dive. So many of these glossary terms will be kind of a high level, sort of a dictionary definition, if you will, but people will augment the flashcard with supporting points about the concept or the term. What that does, we know adult learners learn best when we have many touch points with a topic or a concept. And what this does is allows you to read the material in your textbook. It allows you to use the flashcards to exercise your cognitive skills on recall. And then it allows you to take what you recall from having read the curriculum and physically writing it down on the page. And so you're getting 3 or 4 different kinds of touch points with the material, which really reinforces your learning. So that's been reported again and again back to me as a best practice, so we highly recommend that as a strategy. So you have the flashcards, and you have an online glossary of terminology, which is very important. It's very important to understand the terminology. I'm actively doing a quality assessment of an audit activity right now of a bank in Washington, D.C. And in working with the audit team there, it's very interesting because in performing my work and evaluating their conformance with standards and their delivery of value to their stakeholders, their audit committee and their board and their senior management and so forth, they have a little different view of various terms in the glossary than I do, because my experience and my expertise comes from understanding the IIA's definition and understanding how those glossary terms fit in with our professional practice and how they fit in with our standards. Like we know through all of life, different words means different things to different people. But it's imperative that you understand the glossary terminology from the IIA's perspective, because your exam questions are going to be contextual, right? They're going to be in the context of an audit, environment question or an audit challenge or something, and they're going to use the terminology as it's defined in the IIA's glossary. So this is a really important tool. We often are asked, how long am I going to have to study, right? So what's my time commitment? What does this look like for me? You can customize your learning experience to your life, and we highly recommend being very realistic about the duration of study that's going to be necessary for you to be successful. Oftentimes, I think the average is about 5 or 6 weeks for part 1 and part 2. And each of those separately, 5 or 6 weeks for part 1, 5 or 6 weeks for part 2. Some people take quite a bit longer. Some people will take 12 weeks or, 4 months to study for part 1 or part 2. Some people, again, if you work for an audit activity that follows the standards precisely, they follow internal audit methodology that is prescribed in our guidance, you probably already know very much, a lot of the content. However, I will say that if you work for a government agency or particularly like a state or local government or perhaps a school district or a nonprofit, and maybe you don't follow the Red Book guidance exactly. Maybe you follow some Yellow Book guidance also. You're going to have challenges, and so you're going to need to study more. Be sure that you think outside of your personal work experience. Be sure that you know that professional practices framework, you know the standards, you know the glossary terminology. outside of the scope of your work. The standards and the guidance are pretty heavily skewed around a for-profit kind of Fortune 500 organization, okay? So think kind of big business and a larger audit shop that has a formal audit committee where the audit activity is reporting directly to the audit committee functionally, and that gives them their independence that they need in order to do good quality objective work, right? So the point is that the number of hours that you're going to need to study is dependent on you. It depends on your work experience, how recently you've come out of university, that type of thing. So I can tell you that I am a certified public accountant licensed here in the state of California. When I took my CIA exams, I had about 17 or 18 years of work experience. Under my belt, I had been a regulatory examiner in the state of California, a banking examiner. I had also been a VP finance of a small community bank here in California. I had been working in public accounting for about 4 years. So I had had exposure to manufacturing companies and retail. I had some nonprofits. I had a couple of cities, smaller cities. I also had a lot of financial services organizations. So I had a broad scope of exposure and a broad scope of experience. I also, at the time that I was taking my CIA exams, I was vice president of risk management. So I had been responsible for internal audit, the legal and compliance teams, and I had a lot of responsibilities. So the bottom line is that I had a lot of work experience, and I already had earned a number of certifications. The bottom line for me, I studied for Part 1 and Part 2 together because Part 1 is all about our attribute standards. It's all about our independence, our objectivity, the requirement that we have a charter, proficiency in due professional care. It's about our quality assurance and improvement program. And then Part 1 also takes a pretty deep dive into governance, risk management, risk assessment, and internal control. Part 2 is our audit methodology. It simply goes through how we do a risk assessment, how we derive an annual risk-based audit plan, how we do engagement level planning, how we do testing, how we choose the test steps that we're going to do to accomplish audit objectives, how we're going to report on our work, how we're going to monitor for management's remediation of the work. So Part 1 and Part 2, you can see that they're very closely correlated. It's all about the standards. For me, I studied Part 1 and Part 2 together after taking a full day exam prep class for each part, and I studied about 50 hours. 50 hours for Part 1 and Part 2, plus my 2 8-hour days in the classroom, so call it 68 or 70 hours total. And I was successful on each exam part on my first attempt. In fact, I took them on the same day. I took Part 1 in the morning, and I took Part 2 in the afternoon. For my Part 3, I was already a CPA. I spent very little time on the financial management topics, but I spent a lot of time on the information security and the IT topic. Why? Because that was very foreign to me. I still have never done an IT audit. In nearly 40 years of my career, I've never done an IT audit. It was very scary for me. In fact, it almost intimidated me to not even try to earn my CIA certification because I was scared of failure, right? None of us like to fail. But I can tell you from my Part 3, if we carve out that financial management stuff, because I already knew that inside out, I spent about 80 hours studying Part 3, but I did indeed pass on my very first attempt. So that's my testimonial, for whatever it's worth. That's a very long story. The point is, you need to be realistic about your life and how many hours per week you are willing to dedicate to your study. You need to be realistic about your work experience, and if you have a very broad global perspective, or maybe not. Maybe your perspective is your school district, in your community of, 50,000 people population in the heartland of America. And that is fabulous. You're probably doing brilliant audit work, but that skill set that you've earned in that environment may not translate to easy success on your CIA exams. Got to think broadly, globally. You need to know our standards and guidance inside out. So, customize your study plan, follow your plan. In the learning system, we have a fabulous tool. This is the practice exam that this user interface, the screens that you will see in the learning system look exactly like you will experience on your actual CIA exam when you are either online or you're at the Pearson VUE test site, okay? You will see in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, you will see the time clock ticking away, right? And the time winding down until the end of your time allocation for your exam. It allows you to flag questions. So as you find questions that you're not sure of the answer, you'll want to choose an answer. Always choose an answer. Do not leave any questions unanswered. You will choose an answer, but you'll be able to flag it. And at the end of your exam, you'll get a screen that will pop up and show you all of those questions that you have flagged. And if you're using your good time management skills, you'll be able to go back and revisit those questions that you flagged. Oftentimes, as you're moving through your exam questions, very often, you'll see an exam question that will trigger something in your mind that will remind you of the correct answer to a previous question that you were unsure of. So this is a very valuable opportunity for you to practice your good time management skills. I recommend that you develop a rhythm as you're working through the quiz questions. Develop a rhythm of 1 minute per question. And if you're getting up to the end of a minute and you haven't chosen an answer, pick an answer and move on. You must develop that discipline so that you don't get that analysis paralysis and just burn time and get to the end of your exam and still have unanswered questions. Okay, so you want to eliminate the time element as an issue of that can cause you anxiety. So practice that 1 minute per question rhythm. Like I said earlier, part one, you have 125 questions. If you're doing 1 minute per question, that's 2 hours and 5 minutes, okay? That will give you, because you have 2.5 hours to pass or to take all of your 125 questions, that'll give you a 25-minute buffer of time at the end so that you have time built in to go back and revisit those questions that you flagged, okay? So the learning system has this practice exam that will be very useful to you to go back and look at the questions that you flagged and hopefully get 1 or 2 more of them correct. Okay? Here is a practice question. Which of the following fraudulent entries is most likely to be made to conceal the theft of an asset? Now, let's think about this. Many of you might think, oh my gosh, okay, this is a fraud question. You might be thinking, okay, this is an accounting question. Okay, where am I going to see this type of question? When we talk about the exam syllabus, Part 1 exam syllabus covers the attribute standards. It also covers governance, risk, and control. And it also covers a little bit on fraud, kind of a high-level review of fraud. You might see a fraud question in any one of the 3 exams. Why? Because we have standards. in the Proficiency and Due Professional Care series of standards, we have kind of a substandard on fraud and a substandard on IT. And those standards tell us that all of us as internal audit generalists, we need to understand the basics, sufficient to enable us to do our work. In the IT area, we need to understand the fundamentals of IT risk and control. We need to understand fundamentals of IT general controls, IT application controls. In the area of fraud, we need to understand the fraud red flags in the areas that we're auditing. We need to understand what kinds of fraud might be perpetrated in the area that we're auditing. So, for example, if you're auditing the procurement to pay cycle, you need to understand what are the typical frauds that could occur in procurement activities and contracting activities. What are the typical kinds of frauds that might occur in the payment processes? Okay? So the point being, you could see a question like this in any one of your 3 exam parts. This one, I would say, would more likely to be in your exam, your Part 3 exam, because this is where we have the financial management topics. In terms of analyzing the question, we want to look for key words, okay? Key words. For example, which of the following fraudulent entries is most likely to be made to conceal the theft of an asset? So presumably, you know, you get the picture. What's going on here? We have a fraud perpetrator who has stolen something. They've committed a fraud. Now, how are they going to hide it? They want to conceal it. And it's a fraudulent entry, so they're going to make an accounting entry into the organization's books and records. Okay? So we want to understand the context of the question. In this instance, answer A is the best answer, because the fraud perpetrator, of course, in the absence of good segregation of duties, they would be debiting an expense account to run it through the profit and loss statement. That way it can more easily be buried and not identified. And they would credit the asset account to wipe it off of the books, right? Assets carry debit balances. So by crediting the asset that they have stolen, this eliminates it from the books. So nobody's going to be looking for it. It's gone on the books and records, and it's buried through the profit and loss statement. Okay, let's talk about some study tips. Use a study approach that is best for you. By this point in your life, you should know how you study best. Some people need an instructor. You know, some people need to study with a group. They need to have that accountability. Critical that you're realistic about your time. Okay? Once you do make your commitment for success on your CIA exams, understand how many hours per week you're willing to study. Put those hours on your calendar and show up for your appointments. You're only, you know, this is all about you. It's all about your career path. It's all about your career success. So make it happen, okay? Put it on your calendar and show up for your appointments. Don't dismiss it as a lower priority. It's got to be a priority. Don't procrastinate. Many times I have had students in my classes, and they procrastinate. They come away from the class maybe feeling a little bit overwhelmed, and then they don't get right to their studies. Those that get right to the studies, they make it happen. They're successful because the information they've learned in class is fresh in their minds, and now they are just capitalizing on what they've had in class, and they're moving forward with their study plan. Don't wait. Get it done. As the world evolves, as business evolves, as the complexities of business evolve, as cyber risks become more and more prevalent in everything we do, you know, we know that cybersecurity has become a matter of national security for us. We know that government bad actors are penetrating our systems. A week doesn't go by that we don't have another cyber event, right? The world is getting more and more complex, so get the exam done now. Don't wait a year or 2 or 3 from now when the world is even exponentially more complex than it is today. You know, use the Nike slogan, just do it, right? Just do it. So set your study plan, use those flashcards. I spent a lot of time talking about the flashcards and the glossary terms. Focus on proficiency areas. What do we mean by that? We have your exam topics are broken down into those that are tested at the basic level and those that are tested at the proficiency level. And they're identified in your curriculum. So the proficiency level topics take a deeper dive. It requires more analysis, more synthesis of information, more judgment. Your basic level topics are going to be tested more around terminology and definition, and they're typically going to be easier to answer. So pay attention to those proficiency areas. Understand the practical application of what you're learning. Go beyond memorization, right? Don't just memorize. Make sure that you can understand what you're learning in the context of a business environment or a business challenge or an audit, an actual audit that you're planning or performing or reporting on. Be prepared for your Pearson VUE exam experience, okay? And the IIA-CIA learning system is going to be invaluable because you're going to have that practice exam that you can take advantage of at the end of your studies so that you know exactly the look and feel of the interface that you'll be using in your actual exam. Pay special attention to the professional practices framework, of course. That's what you're being tested on, the standards and guidance. Write an audit manual. That would be quite an undertaking. I recommend that you can at least write a comprehensive table of contents to an audit manual, at least, so that you dot every I, cross every T, you tick every box, and you know, if you know your standards and your guidance, you would be able to pretty easily compile a table of contents for an internal audit policy and procedure manual. And then, of course, think about your real-life examples, but don't get stuck there, right? You've got to think broadly and think globally in being successful on the CIA exams. Test-taking tips. So when you're actually working your exam questions, read the last sentence. Look for that sentence that has the question mark at the end of it. Understand the question that is being asked before you read all the details, okay? So read the last sentence, which is going to be the question being asked, anticipate your answer, and then go back and read the background narrative prior to the question, and then reread the question. The number one test-taking tip that we have is read the question. Looking for those qualifiers, the clues like except for, or not likely, or least likely. If you see an answer choice that has the words always or never in the answer choice, that's probably not the answer because those are absolutes, right? Always and never are absolutes. So if you see an answer option that has those words, it's probably not the good answer. Anticipate your answer before you read the choices. Again, think very broadly. Eliminate the obvious distractors, those questions that are, those answer choices that are obviously wrong, that don't relate to the question being asked, and or those answer choices that are silly, ridiculous. First impression, avoid analysis paralysis. If you're not sure of the answer, answer it anyway. Absolutely critical that you move along and develop your time management skills, practice that rhythm so that you get through all of the questions and you have that buffer of time at the end of your exam so that you can go back and revisit any of those that you flagged. Don't rush, be well rested, eat a good meal, be comfortable for the exam. You know, these are kind of the common sense things that we may not always think about. Okay, let's continue. Here's another good practice question for you. This would probably be one of those questions I would consider at the basic level, but I can tell you a lot of people would answer this incorrectly. This is determining that engagement objectives have been met is ultimately the responsibility of who? In your Part 1 and Part 2 exams, you will see a lot of questions on roles and responsibilities. Who's responsible for what? Audit committee, the board of directors, the internal auditor, the chief audit executive, right? The word ultimately in this question should give you very good insight into the correct answer. Making sure that engagement objectives have been accomplished is the responsibility of the senior audit leader, the chief audit executive. So in terms of understanding this question, recognize that the chief audit executive is the very senior leader in the audit function, and that person might have only 2 or 3 direct reports. Or that person might have a couple hundred direct reports. Obviously, there's going to be layers of supervisors and managers and probably audit directors, up the chain of command of the larger audit activity. The point is that ultimately the chief audit executive, that senior business unit manager responsible for internal audit, is the one who's ultimately responsible. Okay? So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kelly Quinn, and she's going to tell you a few closing remarks about how to get the learning system, discount codes, and so forth. So Kelly, you're up. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks so much, Vicki. Jonathan, we really appreciate you sharing all of the helpful tips about the CIA exam and the application process and benefits of becoming a CIA. And also to Vicki thank you for sharing all the tips on how to prepare for the CIA exam. So now the fun part of the presentation, we are going to announce a winner. So one person on the call is going to receive a free registration for one of the ICI exam prep seminars. And so I am going to ask Marie to please announce and draw a random name.
Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, let me scroll through with my eyes closed, I promise, the attendee list. And let's see where my mouse lands. And it looks like it is Vanessa Herrera. Vanessa Herrera, congratulations.
Great, thanks, Marie. And Vanessa, we will reach out to you directly, and you'll be able to choose which CIA prep seminar you wish to attend. Okay, I also would like to share with you that on the call today, we are going to be offering you a 20% discount on the learning system materials. That may be applied to the individual parts or the full kits, and that's also on top of the member discounts available. So in your resources section here on the webinar, you'll be able to find that discount code there. And in addition, we just wanted to remind you that to maintain your CI certificate, when you do achieve that, you will need 40 hours of CPEs if you are a practicing CIA and 20 hours of CPEs if you're a non-practicing CIA. So make sure after all that hard work that you're able to maintain your certification by keeping up with your CPEs. Okay, so we have just a couple minutes for questions, but before we do that, I just wanted to let you know if you would like a download of this recording or a copy of these slides, give us a couple days, but we will post those to this website, learnci.com/webinar-archives. And if we don't get to your question today, we will follow up with you directly. So we'll just give us a little bit and we'll be reaching out to you directly. But I'm just going to turn it over to Marie here to go through a couple of quick questions before we wrap up.
Sure will. Yeah, we have some questions. Let me put out the first question. And let's see. That looks like Kelly. I purchased version 7 already. Will I have access to the new practice questions being added?
Yes, that's a great question. That is something that we are just about to announce. We are adding hundreds of new practice questions. We actually just did to the learning system. So if you have purchased our current version 7, the next time you log in, you will automatically have access to these new hundreds of practice questions that were recently added. You do not have to purchase them separately.
Okay, super, thank you. And we do also have a question. I think this one is for Jonathan. Will I be able to test from home throughout this year?
Yes. It looks like things are getting a little bit more interesting with New York starting to remove some of their mandates. But for now, online testing is going to be available, and then we'll revisit at the end of the year.
Okay, super. Thank you so much. Here's a question for Vicki. When I'm taking the online practice quizzes, what percentage score do you recommend that I achieve to know if I'm ready for the exam?
That's a very good question. I would say north of 90%. Definitely. Yeah, at least 90%.
Okay, super.
Let me make one other comment, though. Yeah. One other point, though, Marie, is that
sure,
as you're working through those quiz questions, make sure when you are uncertain about an answer, when you're stuck between two choices, make sure, even if you get lucky and get the answer correct, make sure you go back to the content and revisit it. Because if you're unsure of your answer, you're very likely going to be unsure during your actual CIA exam experience, and you may not be lucky. Okay, so this is something that you can move through those quiz questions, and you're answering them correctly, and you're scoring 85%, 90%. But if you're still unsure about answers and content, keep studying, even if you're at that 90% mark. Thank you, Marie.
Good advice. No, good advice. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. This
Marie,
looks like another version. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to, I saw a couple questions coming in about people having trouble finding the discount code. So I just wanted to share that quickly. It is CIA222. And if you go to learnci.com and enter that CIA222, you'll get 20% off. And that's available until March 1st. So I think we've had a couple of people having trouble finding that. So I just want to make sure to share that information.
Oh, okay, great, thank you. And folks, that's in the center of your console, underneath the slide area. You'll see a little box there, and it's got that information right in there. Okay? All right, super. Couple more questions. Kelly, this looks like another version question. Someone has version 6, but they'd like to upgrade to the new version 7 and wondering how they do that.
Sure, absolutely. Yes, you are able to upgrade. It's not mandatory. But if you'd like the new version 7, you can go to the website learncia.com/upgrade. Again, learncia.com/upgrade. And there's information there about how to apply to for the new version 7.
Very good. Thank you. And we have a language question for Jonathan. I registered for the exam and plan to take it in French. Can I also see the questions in English while I'm taking the exam?
Yes. There's a very visible icon that you will see underneath the question that allows you to toggle the language between English or the selected exam language of your choice. So either way, you'll be able to see the exam in both languages if you choose.
Super. Thank you so much. I think that's all the time we have for questions. Kelly, if you have any final words, I'll turn it back to you.
Sure. Well, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for joining us today. If we did not have a chance to get to your question, we will follow up with you directly. And again, a copy of the slides and the recording can be found at this website shown here, learnci.com/webinar-archive. But we really appreciate your time today, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly, Jonathan, and Vicki, for great programs. Thank you, everyone, for attending. We hope to see you back for other programs from the IIA and our CIA partners. Stay safe. Have a great day. Bye-bye.